Hi, Bill.
Hi, Fred.
Thanks for joining us
Thanks
today.
for having me.
Now, this, folks, is Bill Walsh. Bill Walsh is a personality here. Can I use that term? Personality on the island. A good personality, by the way, if I may say.
You need to raise the bar, Fred.
For those of you, I'm sure, who have watched the show, I try to interject some humor from time to time. My guests are not sure whether they're allowed to or not, and Bill, you're certainly allowed to. And as you can see, Bill has a lot of aptitude in that regard, so thank you. Thank you for starting it off that way. Also, by the way, Serge is back. He was back the last show. He was missing for one, and I got a lot of complaints about that. So Serge is back and doing his job, which is sleeping and hanging out. Thank you, sir.
I'm a little disappointed. He was sitting in my lap before we started. The lights go on. He jumps to the primo seat.
Well, Bill, thanks for bringing that up. Last episode, I did qualify that a little bit by saying that I've had to renegotiate his contract. And part of his responsibility now is to warm up the guests.
Well, it worked.
Not everybody feels comfortable in this kind of venue, no matter what you've done in the past. And people sometimes are a little apprehensive, And so he sits with the guests, and then he comes over here because he knows who's giving him the snacks.
Yeah, so you thought I was special.
No, you are special. Everybody's special. One of the real reasons I brought you on here, though we'll see where the conversation takes us, is to talk about an initiative that I think technically you're the president of. It's a not-for-profit organization called ReClam the Bay.
ReClam the Bay.
And I told a lot of folks, that are subscribers to this show, people that have viewed the show, and thanks very much for your viewership. I told them that you were coming, and they said, great. And I asked, do you know what ReClam the Bay is? And a lot of people then kind of just stop, they don't say anything. Mm-hmm. From one extreme, it's exactly what it's supposed to be, and you can share that. And other folks thought it was about providing more seafood for the island, which that may be a side effect.
Yeah, it's like an indirect benefit, I'll
very
call
indirect.
It. Right.
But why don't you share what it actually means?
Sure, great. Well, first of all, thanks for thinking of us and having ReClam the Bay on.
You're welcome.
This is great. Another great avenue for us to get the word out and have more people understand what we do, and hopefully you want to get involved and volunteer. So we are entering our 21st year.
Wow.
Born in 2005 out of a program called Barnegat Bay Shellfish Restoration Program, which was run by the County Extension Office, Rutgers County Extension Office of Ocean County. There was a gentleman by the name of Jeff Flimlin who was the marine agent for Ocean County, and he came up with this idea where he wanted to start putting additional shellfish, primarily hard clams, back into the bay because of their filter feeding benefits. They eat the phytoplankton, they eat the algae, they clean up the water. Cleaner water means sunlight gets to the bottom, the beneficial grasses grow on the bay floors again, it becomes habitat for all kinds of critters, finfish, shellfish, crabs, anything that lives in the bay basically. It becomes habitat. And so there were a bunch of volunteers. Chief volunteer, I'll call him, was Rick Bushnell, who currently serves as the chairman of ReClam the Bay. And he's one of the founders of the organization. And the idea was, as the story goes, Rick said to Jeff, so how do we reclaim the bay? Because in the summertime you had algae blooms, you had all kinds of things going back, right, 30, 40 years ago. And Jeff's response was, if you want to reclaim the bay, you need to reclaim the bay. And that, in theory, or at least true or not, it's a decent story. But that's kind of our beginnings. And we started out as an educational organization, teaching people about the benefits of filter feeders, clams and oysters, and bay scallops as well. And the benefits they bring. Not only are they tasty little critters for consumption, but they also clean up the water, and they create habitat for other bay creatures. So that's kind of the start.
Yeah, there's been a lot of, and that's a great intro because I've actually made wagers with people, nickel and dime, and we're giving pennies away now anyway. Nobody
that's right.
is interested in pennies anymore about the actual title. And there are folks that say, no, it's not reclaim, it's reclaim. And I said, no, it's not reclaim, it's reclam. So that kind of explains.
It is ReClam. It's a constant battle with autocorrect on whatever app you're using or whatever phone you're using, but it is ReClam.
How do you know when you're, this has been going on for how long, 21 years?
Yeah, we're in our 21st year.
Wow. And you're the president of this organization.
I am now,
It's
yes.
not for
that's right.
profit.
Correct.
Clearly. Right. How do you know, what does like success look like? How do you know that it's moving in the right direction?
Well, ideally, this is more of an end game answer. I'll start there.
Okay.
Ideally, we put ourselves out of business. And what I mean by that is the shellfish populations in Barnegat Bay, in all of the Little Egg, Great Bay, Manahawkin Bay, and Barnegat Bay, are all self-sustaining again. They haven't been for years, and there's a bunch of reasons why. Disease, a big one, over-harvesting, a big one, pollution and other human impacts are kind of like, the three big reasons. So ideally, if we can get that sustaining again, and what we do is we get clam seed. When I say clam seed, I mean 2 millimeters, kind of head of a pin, maybe a little bit bigger. And we grow them in something called an upweller. Now, an upweller is basically a fiberglass tank, 4 feet by 8 feet, a couple feet deep, and they have cylinders about 16 inches wide that have a screen on the bottom. And as we circulate bay water through this tank, the water wells up through the bottom, hence the term upwelling, through the bottom of the cylinder, and the shellfish take the nutrients and whatever they need in their food out of the phytoplankton, and they take the oxygen out of the water, and then nitrates and calcium to help build shell, calcium carbonate to help build shell. And then what we do at the end of the season is we put them in the bay under a protective screen. We do that in order to let them grow and be better able to protect themselves from predators. Primarily crabs, cow-nosed rays, moon snails, sea stars, and a host of other things, oyster drills that really, everybody's got to eat kind of thing. But we try to protect them so they can get older and better manage for themselves. So they may spend a year, sometimes a year and a half under these screens. Then we rake them out. And then depending on, we distribute them throughout the bays in areas approved for shellfishing, 365 days a year. And many times with the help of the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection, they will purchase us the seed, the clam seed. We'll grow them out in our upwellers, of which we now have 13 up and down the coast.
On the island here.
We have 5 on the island, and we have 3 on the mainland, and others are on the bay in the northern part of the bay. As far south as Beach Haven, Tuckerton on the mainland, and we go all the way up to Manahawkin. So we're 13, and interesting enough, we're having discussions now with the Harvey Cedars governing body about whether or not we can find a spot in Harvey Cedars to put what would be our 14th tank, which would be awesome if we could do that.
So I believe you're having some conversations actually with
Commissioner Geiger.
Joe Geiger, right?
Yep. With
Regarding
DPW and parks and building, public buildings, I think is his title,
Yeah. I think he's certainly very open-minded and willing, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the initial conversation was as good as it can get as far as ReClam the Bay is concerned. So we're actually going to meet and talk about a location and talk about the requirements, what little bit of infrastructure we need to support that, and how we can kind of collaborate on this and get another upweller going and get hopefully some Harvey Cedars residents who would like to participate as volunteers, because we're an all-volunteer organization.
Yeah, right.
And we probably have 80 to 125 volunteers, I'll call them full-timers. Then we have hundreds of others who kind of come in based on a project, in and out.
Yeah, without mentioning names, I know that there are a number of people already, right, from Harvey Cedars that are
involved,
helping. You're getting involved with Harvey Cedars, your effort, which is a great one, by the way, and even though some folks don't know if it's ReClam or Reclaim, but it's the one and the same, right? We're all on the same team, basically. Working with Geiger and DPW, what type of an impact would that have on your effort? A big impact, small?
Well, it would have a big impact because the DPW department folks understand the plumbing issues, understand the trenching issues, understand what we need. And, all we have to tell them basically is what we need in terms of infrastructure. And they're talking about, we'll run freshwater lines that we use for cleaning the tanks and cleaning off the shellfish between growing intervals, and the electricity to run that pump that runs not 365, but 24 hours a day for about 5 or 6 months.
Yeah, so sort of like a plug and play. Right?
Yeah, basically. So whatever assistance we can get in that regard is great, because each time we open up another upweller, we're going to learn a little bit more that we can hopefully use to improve the efficiency of all the other operations.
Yeah.
So
How can, so you mentioned volunteers. What can people do if they're interested after listening to?
Sure.
What
There's
you're
a
trying to
bunch of
accomplish
different things we have. A lot of people want to get dirty. They want to help grow the shellfish. They want to help build living shorelines that we also do. Excuse me. So the cleaning of the shellfish involves a weekly event. It may run an hour or two, depending on how much has to get done. But essentially, we'll drain the tank out, wash it down, scrub it down, hose off the shellfish. You can hose off with freshwater clams and oysters, but not bay scallops. Bay scallops do not particularly like fresh water. So we treat them a little bit more gingerly and keep them in bay water all the time. And so that cleaning process, but the other thing is we're teaching people about the environment. We're teaching people about what they can do in their daily lives to kind of clean up and be a steward of the coast, because it's all about really protecting this coastal way of life that we all love so much, right?
Yeah.
And so whatever
That's why
we
we're
can
here,
do
right? Yeah.
to clean up the water, there's some crazy kind of facts. In a laboratory setting, which is not the real world, but in a laboratory setting, and I'll use that because this number is out there, has been forever. An adult oyster can filter in a laboratory setting up to 50 gallons of water per day.
Wow,
One oyster, which is a huge number.
that is.
Now, in the real world, there are tide cycles, and oysters can stand a tide cycle out of the water, so they're not feeding. Days like today, where we're sitting here and it's in the 20s and the bay is nearly frozen over, they're not going to do a lot of eating either. So probably on average, that number is around half of that, maybe even less than half of that. But still, let's call it 20 gallons of water a day per an adult clam and or oyster. And if you have millions of them in the bay, think about that. Now, as the story goes, when the Dutch first sailed into Barnegat Inlet, there were so many oyster reefs and oyster bars they could not get their ships all the way in. 60% of the bay floor was covered with oyster reefs. So many that it's estimated that they could filter the entire Barnegat Bay in less than a half an hour. So it must have been like swimming in the Caribbean.
Yeah.
Right? So will we get back to the Caribbean? No, I don't think so. Will we get back to a self-sustaining shellfish population without some assistance? In my lifetime, I don't think so. But we're heading that way.
What do you think environmentally? You mentioned 3 things earlier in the show, but is it pollution mostly, or traffic, bay traffic, or what is it that's caused less of a population of these clammed
I would say
fish?
the 2 big ones,
Shellfish.
and it's hard to really rank them, but disease was a horrible thing. There were 2 diseases in particular, dermo and MSX, that attacked mostly the oyster population. I mean, we used to be a supplier of a significant amount of oysters regionally into Philadelphia, into New York, coming out of our bays. And the populations were decimated to the fact something like 75–80% were destroyed by these 2 diseases. In addition to that, there's pollution. So you have runoff, and you have whatever's in the street ends up in the bay. In fact, if you look at this estuary, the Barnegat Bay watershed, which runs about 12 miles to the west of where we're sitting and covers 650 or so square miles, whatever gets in the water within that watershed generally ends up at some point in time here, whether it's a surface stream or river, or it's an underground source of water, or it comes out of any outfall that's in the street, a storm sewer, etc., ends up in the bay. So that contributes to not the pollution, but the excess nitrogen. There's a lot of nitrogen in fertilizers. People like nice green lawns. And you got to be careful when you use it. We're not suggesting that you don't use it. You just need to pay attention when you're using it.
No.
You're not going to put it down before there's a huge rainfall, because it's going to wash in the street. And the algae love it, and you end up with an algae bloom. An algae bloom in the bay is horrible because the sunlight can't get through it.
Ah.
It's like throwing a carpet on a plot of grass. No sunlight, no grass. Same thing with the bay. No sunlight to the bottom, no beneficial grasses, no habitat or reduced habitat.
So you've been doing, so this organization, 21 years. So obviously there's a positive impact that you all are providing.
Over 32 million shellfish we have put back in the bay.
Wow, that's a huge number.
Between clams, hard clams, which are the ones that we use. And the clams we grow for consumption, meaning after we take them out from under those nets we talked about, we distribute them in the bay where anybody with a shellfish license can harvest them. Oysters we grow for restoration purposes. We use them for erosion control, for building oyster reefs and living shorelines, not for consumption. So,
Okay.
yeah, so 32 million between the shellfish and the larvae. Even last year we purchased 12 million oyster larvae. Now 2.5 fits in your hand like that. And we put them in tanks with bags of shell, let them eat, feed them a little bit. They swim around until the shell gets too heavy and they sink to the bottom. They need some hard substrate to set on. They secrete their own version of a superglue. It's a protein-based kind of superglue. And so wherever they land, an oyster, that's it, they stick. Right? Clams can move around a little bit, technically up and down, maybe a little side to side, but that's more by accident than by design. And so we'll do that, 12 million of those last year. We had set rates of 18, 19, 20%. And if you listen to the experts in the field, it's somewhere between 5 and 25 is the bogey that you're shooting for. And we came in the high teens. So we're very happy with that. And
So people that are watching, how can they learn more through your website? How do they volunteer through your website?
Through the website, excuse me, there is a little button on the website, the first page, that says something on the order of keep me in the loop. And essentially that'll take you to a little survey. Your name and address and contact info, and then what you want to be involved with. Do you want to help grow shellfish? Do you want to help? We have a vibrant shellfish in the classroom program that we have seen in the last 20 years over 12,000 kids. Last year, 1,500. So we'll go into the classrooms, we'll explain to them a little bit about shellfish biology depending on the age of the kids. The older kids, middle school and high school, will actually bring in a tank with some clams and oysters and let them care for them throughout the semester. It works into the STEM curriculum a little bit. They're doing measuring, they're taking water temperature, air temperature, measuring the salinity, because there is a range of salinity and the amount of salt in the water that they prefer. And they'll do that, and the teachers love it, and the kids love it, and it's been working great, and we're hoping to expand. Last year we went as far south as Cherry Hill and as far north as Edison.
Wow, that is,
excuse me. Yeah.
that's impressive. Well,
So that's another great one. I mean, in addition to helping the shellfish or helping grow shellfish and caring for shellfish, there is the Shellfish in the Classroom program. There is a kind of a speakers bureau that we have where we'll go out and do discussions to local community groups, civic organizations. I'm actually doing one for gun and decoy collectors in a couple of weeks. And in addition to that, we do about 30 to 40, maybe 50 community events a year. Surf City Farmers Market. We'll do the Beach Haven Chowder Cook-Off. We'll do the Gun and Decoy Show in Tuckerton. All these public events where we'll set up an education table, but we'll also sell some of our gear, hats, t-shirts, swag, in order for us to basically sustain the operation because we're all volunteer.
Yeah, I like that sweatshirt you have on there.
Yeah, I am sporting the logo a little bit here, which I think is important. So
yeah, you're a very good representative of these efforts.
Well,
so,
thank you.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of great stuff to get involved with, and there's always the back office stuff, which is the tougher thing to get people interested. If someone says, I'm an accountant and I don't want to do accounting if I'm in my volunteer time, I want to do something else. So we do run into that little bit of a hurdle, but yes, but it's great, and we're always looking for that kind of help.
Well, I did financial analysis back in the day, and I don't blame them for wanting to do something other than numbers.
We've got retired doctors, lawyers, engineers, chemists, a lot of teachers.
Yeah.
And thankfully the teachers like to do the shellfish in the classroom because they're not only doing something they're familiar with, but they're teaching others who haven't done that about the right way to approach all levels of students. So it's and that's the important part because we're always learning. We're always looking for opportunities to learn more.
So you're involved in many things, and you know, we've been friendly, you know, even before this show, and so you have quite a diverse skill set. Another one, you know, I drive right through North Beach. Everything's pretty quiet over there. Sometimes I'll see some construction going on in the street, but nothing much going on there. Nice and peaceful there. You also are on the Taxpayers Association representing North Beach, and you were part of a consolidated island group
called the Joint Council of Taxpayer Associations.
So I imagine in every town, the value added might be a little different. Would that be fair to say, or is every town? Oh, okay.
Just look at the demographics when you go up and down this island. I mean, an 18-mile island has essentially 6 towns.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But unlike many of the, I guess it's Loveladies and North Beach, maybe the only 2 that don't have some level of commercial industry or commercial buildings.
Do you find so, I mean, certainly the Taxpayers Association here in Harvey Cedars, if you were to summarize per AI what they do, you know, facilitate communication and interface with elected officials.
Right.
And I imagine that's a little different from town to town as well, because you don't have commissioners, you don't have a mayor per se in North Beach.
Right.
You're part of the township.
We're part of Long Beach Township, right?
Yeah. Do you find that you're facilitating more communication or the same as the other towns, being that you're part of this joint committee? You obviously discuss what goes on throughout the island.
The Joint Council is great because something that impacts somebody in Harvey Cedars or in Barnegat Light that maybe hasn't come to Long Beach Township or Ship Bottom or Surf City, that discussion between the groups is important because now you can get to a common platform, I think, for what's important. And a big issue, what I would consider to be probably the biggest issue, is first responders.
Consolidation of effort here on the island?
You know, I mean, we are one of the few areas that still have all volunteer fire and EMS services.
That's certainly the case in Harvey Cedars.
Right, exactly. And if you look at what that means, over time, just the level of volunteerism has declined significantly, I think. There was a time where you had all kinds of people would volunteer for whether it was a fire or EMS or some other local community service. That level is significantly different now.
Well, we're still strong, we're still vibrant, we're just a little older, you know, and
right.
I think that's part of the problem when you're about being a firefighter.
Exactly, yeah. You know, I don't know how at 70 years old I feel like, hey, it's a great idea to run into a burning building.
Yeah, I mean, I have a hard time changing a light bulb, climbing the ladder.
Exactly. Yeah, ladders and I are not as friendly as we used to be either.
Something about depth perception, I'm not really sure what it is.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that's part of it. But that's a critical thing, and people don't understand that. So what I know we did in the North Beach Taxpayers, as well as other organizations, would have representatives from Barnegat Light EMS or from the fire and the rescue folks come in and talk about, this is what we do, this is how we do it. And when you get to cost, this number is old by 3 or 4 years now, but it was $11,000 to $12,000 to outfit one firefighter. Now, when you're talking about a truck, you know, now you're at $750,000 and you could go probably twice that.
Is this, what would you say in your town, what are the, you know, maybe 1 or 2 top items that you as a taxpayer, a member of the Taxpayers Association, really can assist with and have assisted with? What couple of items?
One is, well, taxes is always an issue. You know, when people will talk about there is such a big disparity between how much island residents pay towards educating our students as opposed to the mainland students when
Yeah.
you're in a regional system.
Right.
Well, if you look at the property values and based on New Jersey's formula, it's easy to figure out why the island pays 75, 80% of the total load of educating the kids. Now, most people would say, that's my obligation. People helped educate my kids, I'm going to help educate other people's kids. But there is something of an imbalance.
Yeah.
You know, you're outnumbered relative to the number of votes on the board. There are, I think, 3 island seats out of 9. So it's tough. And years ago, a number of towns hired an organization that apparently had some success in other parts of the state in terms of renegotiating, I'll call it for lack of a better term, what the tax burden would be for islands, residents in a coastal town. I mean, you need to look at it. When you look at, and I think Harvey Cedars is probably the poster child in this regard. They probably pay the most per student out of any of the other towns on the island to educate a child through the regional system. I mean, 250, 275,000. I'm not sure of the number, but it's huge.
Yeah.
So that's a big one. I mean, I think the other issue, the other big one to my mind is the first responders. And people say, I don't want to have a paid system. Well, okay, I understand why. It's significantly more expensive than what we're dealing with now. But you have to come up with some method to increase those who want to volunteer. And there have been moves at the state level to, I guess, legislative moves that would provide some kind of subsidy or some kind of educational credits or something. Because when you look at the requirements for a volunteer firefighter or EMS, they're the same as if they're paid. They're not skipping any educational requirements. So
right,
where does it come from to pay for that, and how does that all work? And how do they get credits and assistance to do that?
Well, my understanding is there's a lot of discussion concerning that, and there's got to be a solution because, as an aging population, we don't have folks on this island that are going to be able to respond within, a matter of minutes.
Exactly. And so I would urge all the taxpayer associations to have the representative from first responders come in to a taxpayer meeting and talk about what they're up against. Talk about, in rough numbers, what their overall budgets are, what kind of assistance they get from the local governing bodies, what kind of assistance they get from people who own property and will support them financially. Well, we would, every time we got either from the fire or EMS, we'd send it out to all our members and say, hey, God forbid, these are the folks who are going to, if you need them, these are the folks who are going to come and they need help.
What percentage of the population in North Beach, homeowners, actually are full-time residents, approximately?
Let's see, out of 600 properties, if it was somewhere north of 20%, I'd be shocked.
Yeah, I think that somewhat weighs also on that, though. Property values, you want to maintain your property values. Sometimes I'm thinking, well, maybe it's because 20%, it's still a requirement. We're still going to have to figure this out for the whole island.
Exactly.
And I think to consolidate it, to your point earlier, we have so many towns here. And I'm not saying that we have to be too dramatic here, but I think volunteer services such as the firefighters, EMS, we got to get our arms around that. And I think that's where taxpayers and our elected officials need to work together.
And all of the taxpayer associations on the island, through this joint council over the last couple of years, you've seen ads in the sandpaper that have talked about firefighters and EMTs and what they're up against. And so the joint council is working to get that knowledge out there and inform people, because many people aren't aware. How many people rent their homes in the summertime or are strictly investment properties? A lot of that kind of, the mailers and that kind of information never makes it to the mail opener.
No.
In some of those situations, you've got investment companies, I mean, hedge funds getting involved in investment real estate. I mean, there's all kinds of different things, and
Yeah.
just you get that distance between homeowner and renter, or homeowner and service, that's vital. And
So, in a small way, this is the purpose of this show, to bring these kinds of things more to the forefront. It's one thing to, read about it. It's another thing to have people discuss it, people that are actually involved in trying to make this island a better place, regardless of what town you live in.
Right.
We're almost coming to an end here, and I usually ask my guests, there's one thing that they would like the viewers to take away from the show, from this particular episode, whether it's reclaiming or consolidation of services or anything else that you have on your mind. What would that be?
Well, I think it would be, I have been lucky enough to get involved with ReClam the Bay. This is my 8th year now. And it is just a great organization of people that want to do the right thing. They want to improve the environment. They want to maintain this coastal way of life that we all love. And they want to have fun doing it. And we're doing all that. So, the bumper sticker is, join us, have some fun, make an impact. That's kind of my bumper sticker, if there is one.
That'd be a good thing for a sweatshirt.
Yeah. I have to see what's on the back, but I don't think that's it. So,
Well, it was really nice having you. I really appreciate
Fred,
it.
thank you so very much. This is great. I really appreciate you
you
inviting me.
And anyone that that is committed as you are, and you're very committed, and the island thanks you for that commitment, I'm sure. I'd love to have
thank
them
you.
on the show to
Sure.
further add to what you just said.
Great.
Thanks very much.
Outstanding. Thank
All
you.
right. Take care.
Appreciate it.